and McCann.
Welcome back to Chant Radio, where we deprogram from the deprogram. Welcome. This is episode 245, and chantitdownradio.com is the website. And I'm going to attach this to a mini-series that I made many years ago called Raising Kids in the New World Order. This is part 4, and you could also place this episode with, I think it was episode 45, way back with Janice Barcelo. All this is related, and today we're going to look at a topic that runs really deep, but most people give it little to no thought. It's another embedded foundational wrong in our society, and that is circumcision. Just like moral relativism, just like vaccines are normal, like following authority is normal, like working all day in a cubicle is normal, like we talked about with police on the earlier shows. Circumcision is also like that too. It's considered normal, but only because it is accepted by generational society, doing the same thing over and over again. So maybe some of you out there might think, oh, I don't need to listen to this one because I'm not going to have kids, or I have girls only, or I'm not circumcised, so I don't need to listen, or I'm a woman, I don't have a penis, or whatever. But none of that matters, because we're going to talk about an ancient practice in our society that has huge repercussions. And to break this down is Sean McCann, the host of Wake the Dead podcast, true speaker, artist, and third time on the show. So welcome back, brother. Welcome back to Chant It Down, Sean.
Well, I'm glad to be here. It's great. And I've found you as a friend, and I'm very glad that you've invited me to talk about this topic because it's very important to me in my life personally. And bodily autonomy, being an anarchist is like, and I know you're an anarchist as well, it's very important that we own our bodies.
Absolutely.
And this practice, it teaches the kid, the baby, that he doesn't own his body. It teaches him that someone can, right out of the womb, or on the second day or the 8th day or whatever, they take him away from the mother and they strap him down to a board and they forcibly remove part of his body. Like, you can't have this, and it's the worst pain that anybody can feel. It's the most, all the nerve endings are there. There's like large blood vessels, and it's trauma. It is trauma.
Yeah, it's like, a lot of people, as they're born into the world, are already traumatized by a hospital birth, and then you add that into the mix, and this stuff lasts for life. And we got to find ways. Well, I have 2 boys, and I'm lucky to have known not to do that. And I'm lucky to have hippie parents that I guess told me not to do. They decided not to do it. So, but I'm seeing these repercussions in our society as I've listened to what you've had to say about it already, and just all the things I knew before. So let's definitely dive into it, because it's really like it's multi-layered. There's so much to this that most people would never even give thought to.
Right. Well, that's that right there is an important point, that no one ever gives thought to it. But that is a function of the trauma. Because it's so traumatic, it puts an amnesia wall almost in the victim, and it causes dissociation. It's the same mental mechanism that happens with satanic ritual abuse. And a lot of people, if they don't know what that is, they should look into it. You probably talked about it on your show in the past. Yeah. I talk about it all the time on my show, Wake the Dead. So anyway, this mechanism is a protection in the mind. It's like going into shock. When trauma occurs, the adrenaline makes you not feel the pain to protect you from the harm, so that you can get away from whatever is eating you or killing you or whatever.
Yeah, it's a natural function of the body that is there for a reason.
But... Exactly. And likewise, that's what this dissociation does, because the baby is held down, like it can't run and it can't fight, obviously, and so it's trapped there. We have the fight and flight mechanism in our brain, but not even that can save us. So we go to a third option, which is dissociation. Um, a lot of times the baby will look like he's passed out or he went to sleep during the circumcision, and a lot of doctors will be like, "Oh, it didn't hurt. He slept right through it. It's fine." But really, that was the kid. The soul of the child had to escape the body because the pain was so excruciating.
Damn.
Yeah. So that's okay. So it is. I guess I wanted to like I wanted to start at a kind of a weird area, but because there's a lot of people that are in a tizzy about genital mutilation. Like people get real mad about female genital mutilation. They get,
Right.
"Oh my God, that's the worst thing ever." It
Mhm.
is. I mean, it's terrible.
Like what the Muslims practice, you mean? Like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
And, I mean, they fully removed the clit. Like it's horrific and disgusting.
Yeah.
But also male circumcision is male genital mutilation. Same thing. It's just as awful, and it's
Right.
forcibly holding them down. It's the same process, And anyway, so everybody's mad about that. And also, there are a lot of right wing people out there that are mad about the transgender push to have to convince children and the parents of those children to allow them while they're still young to mutilate their genitals. That's what, like, turning it into like a vaginoplasty or whatever. That's mutilation of the genitals. It's really
Right.
what it is. A doctor might think he's an artist and turn it into something that it represents what might have been in nature on the other sex, but whatever. What it is mutilation, and it is
Absolutely.
pain and torture. And whether the victim, I mean, the victim in this case would is convinced through grooming and mind control that they should do that to themselves, which is at least one step better than circumcision of babies that can't choose for themselves.
Yeah,
But I mean, it
definitely.
takes all that mind control of Disney and the schools and all the porno books and stuff in the libraries. So it takes a lot of work to get them to do that. Um, Parents with circumcision have to make that choice, and that they them like the father might have been traumatized, and so he had put that trauma behind an amnesia wall. So when they ask him, "Hey, you gonna circumcise your son?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, whatever. It's just a snip." And he thinks in his mind, "My dick is fine, and oh, there's nothing wrong with it." And like, I was never traumatized. I'm not a victim. People don't want to think like that. So yeah, dude, because it happened to them. If they do it to their son, then that reinforces to them that it wasn't trauma. If they have to think about it, like, is this trauma? Then, and they don't do it to their son, then that causes them like internal, like, holy crap, I was traumatized. And then maybe those
Yeah.
memories will come back. Maybe it's kind of hell to recognize, like,
Because they
you're
have to think about it themselves.
right,
Yeah.
right.
They have
And
to confront it.
the same goes for moms too, because moms love their babies and they don't ever want to think that they ever did that
Yeah.
to their baby, you know? And so they create a wall too. Sometimes, sometimes moms will notice the difference, and maybe then they become an intactivist and they go and spread the word that circumcision is wrong. But a lot of them, they don't get that far in their thinking because and they don't want to be the abuser. They don't want, I love my baby. Oh, but her trust of this priest guy in a white lab coat that tells her to do this thing because the cult says so. And then he lies to her and says, oh, it'll prevent penile cancer, it'll prevent HPV or AIDS or some shit. And all those things it's not true. There's no proof for that.
No.
And it's so like, all it does is damage the organ. It lowers its ability to function properly, and it removes all of its nerve endings. And
Yeah.
that's why America has such trouble with erectile dysfunction, and that's why they care so much about how big their dick is, and because like it's been damaged. There was a piece of it was removed. It's like, so it's deep within us, and the males in our society have all been altered. Well, not all, but many of us have been altered, and in that it changes how we are psychologically, even as adults. It changes us forever, and we stay that way. I'll get more into the psychological
Sure.
effects later. I have more
Yeah.
about that. Um, but so this here, well, let me see if I can.
Yeah, it's is it just America that, besides like out of the Middle East, just America that circumcises the most, or maybe more Western countries? I have no idea, like
Yeah,
UK or
America circumcises. UK actually doesn't circumcise anymore because there was a study published that proved how traumatic it is for the babies, all the
hmm
pain,
ah,
and they recognize that it's not medically necessary, and so they just stopped altogether. But there was only like 10 or 13% at that point when they stopped, and it was in like the 80s or something.
oh
And
wow,
right now it's America, Israel, and maybe one other, I think South Africa or something,
yeah,
where the majority of the males are. And the reason in America is because the American Association of Pediatrics is run by Jews,
aha,
and they want to make it look normal, and uh, that way there's that way there's more acceptance of Jews, right? Because like they're always worried about people rejecting them and thinking they're strange and weird and like they have bad practices and stuff, but
yeah.
they do. I mean, circumcision is a bad practice. It is trauma-based mind
Well,
control. It's
yeah, I
evil.
think that society has a hard time thinking that a whole culture could be wrong that's been around for so long. That's, I think, a big problem people can't get past. But like, if it's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter if it's a
That's right.
thousand, couple thousand years old, whatever it is. It's if it's bad, it's bad. And look, I have nothing against Jewish people themselves, just but the religion side of it that pushes that, I do have a problem with. Like I
Yeah.
have a couple Jewish friends that are just people. They don't really give a shit about a lot of that, but it's
Right.
the cultural practice that is
Right.
not a good norm.
And like they're raised within this cult. I mean, and the cult, like, you must do these practices or else you're not a good Jew and we have to shun you, and there's all these levels of coercion that go
Right.
along with it, well, your grandfather and your father and your mother and like all this, like that's so like this huge weight of, you know it's weird. And then the way that the Jews do it is they have a big party and everybody goes and witnesses it. So the people that all the males in the room have all had it done to them. So when they witness it and they hear that baby scream, it unlocks within them. It reoccurs. The trauma is like their mind is reminded of their own trauma. And then they go into dissociation. And the priest is there, like the master of ceremonies walks in, and the mohel, he walks in, everybody's like, oh, you're the boss, and he's basically a monster that they are allowing to attack the most vulnerable in the room. And like everybody has to hear it and they all have to stand and
Yeah.
watch. And then they go, I mean, an adult will have gone to many bris ceremonies in their lifetime. So it's keep recurring, and it keeps them in this state of like subservient to the monster who might suck the blood out of my penis. The Metzitza is what it's called. Like they suck the pain infused blood.
And that's basically adrenochrome. I mean, isn't it? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Because there's a lot of, there's the adrenaline because they're feeling the pain. There's other humans are drugs. Like, we produce endogenous drugs, and that can be like, it's in our blood, then it's going through our blood while we are being tortured. So that if they harvest that blood, they can use it for their ritual, and they can use it as a drug, you know. And there's a practice, ancient Jews used to do this blood libel, and that is a bloodletting of a child. Usually, they in the history, they always say it's like a Christian boy, like, like what Crowley says, like a 7 or 8 year old, like, male boy of whatever, and they'll bleed him. They'll like cut lots of little cuts so that he doesn't die, and he's just feeling all this pain, and it's like excruciating to tie him down, and they bleed him, and they circumcise. On a lot of times they'll cut the foreskin because there's a lot of blood there too. And
Yeah.
There's Simeon de Trent is a famous one. There are a lot of instances where Jews are caught doing this, or just the circumcision itself is so horrific to many Gentiles that they're just horrified at the whole culture. And I mean, I feel it too. It's like, holy crap, how do they do this to their own babies, So in that sense, it's always like, oh, the Jews are bad. I think that is a big reason why people instinctually hate the Jews, because of how they treat their own babies. I mean, I don't hate anybody, right. They're victims too. I was held down and abused the same way that they were, and I'm not a Jew. Like, it's just, I came from the Boston area, and it was like 90% up there. Like, everybody. Yeah. But anyway,
Catholics do it too, right?
Yeah, they do, even though they're not supposed to.
Because like, when I was in Europe, I went in this old church, and it was creepy. Well, one thing was creepy is they still had caskets cemented into the wall there, like by the podium. But then I went in the back, and there was this big dish, and I guess it was where they performed. I think that's what they said. They performed circumcision.
Wow.
The energy.
It's not
in
the
that
baptism;
building,
it's for circumcision.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so. And it had a drain, but the energy in that place was so bad that we just left. I mean, it was part of the actual tour. We weren't actually trying to go to the church, but for some reason, they thought it would be cool to go in this historic church. It was not cool. And I don't know, but all that stuff, that Gothic stuff is, I don't know, personally scares me. Like, I feel like, ooh, this is this big institution of
it's highly occult. There's a lot of occult.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna share this here now. I'm gonna try to find it. This is the documentary "What Is a Woman" by Matt Walsh.
Identifies as a woman.
Let's see if we can find. I think it was during this interview. No, where is she?
As a woman.
This one.
He's not actually a woman.
That's correct.
Male.
Okay, so where is she? She's talking about this dude, John Money, who did the first.
He is one. Then
there was people would debate on if the nature of the child is, like, if the child grows up from nature or nurture, if that's what really gives the person his personality or whatever. And this John Money guy thought that it was nature, or I mean, not nature, but nurture. Like, what we input into the kid, it's like a robot. It's gonna, it will be that when we're done, when he grows up. And
medical care for you
here. So he had the idea that if you change the sex of a child before they're 3 years old, then they can grow up as a healthy, natural opposite sex. and it won't harm the kid's psychology. And there is a family which had a
in 30,000 people and one.
Yeah, there's a family who had twins, and they thought there was a problem, and they said that the kids had phimosis. And
was it like a burned penis or something?
Yeah, you've heard this story, right?
Yeah, I went over it briefly on this show, but it was John Money. Yeah, well, I'll let you show it here.
Here, I'm trying to find. I should have clipped it out, man. I thought I might have. Here, actually, we'll just skip that part because I'll just talk about it because I thought I had a clip that was like right there, but I got the whole movie and I had to scroll through. I'm sorry, everybody.
No worries.
Basically, Matt Walsh is like got this crusade against the genital mutilation of children, and I agree with it. It's great. Good for it. Good on you. Keep doing the great work,
Yeah.
And so he made this movie, What is a Woman? And it became very popular, and his show blew up and he got recognition for his opinions. And in this movie, he talks about John Money and this family. They had twins, and they believed that the kids had phimosis, which is like when the foreskin is adhered to the glands, and they think that's a problem. But actually, that's because they don't even understand the biology of their own bodies. Like when a child is born, the foreskin is always fused to the glands. That's how it's built. That's how it should be. It's like a hymen. It doesn't like separate from the glands until it separates on its own. Like when they're 13 or something is an average age, and and then the gland starts to be exposed, because they're starting to have, and because they're becoming pubescent, it's supposed to stay fused the whole time when they're a baby. And doctors think that you got to pull it back and clean under there.
Yes.
They're like, oh, this won't pull back. We got to give it a circumcision because it's 5 months. So like these parents were told, oh, there's something wrong with these natural penises that are working perfectly fine. And the parents are like, oh, well, we got to do something. And so they brought their kids to these doctors, and the method that they were using to circumcise, they were using this like hot iron to cauterize the foreskin. And there was a malfunction with the iron, and it burned the entire penis away. Like it burned it away all completely, had no more penis. And that's common. You can lose a penis. They're like botched circumcisions happen every day. So that's another thing parents should think about. Because your kid might not even have a dick. So they're horrified. And then they didn't circumcise the other twin. And so then then it turned out the kid's dick was fine. He grew up fine, normal. But the other kid was abused and mutilated. And parents heard about this John Money, and they were like, oh, and they heard his theory. And they're like, well, our kid is still under 3, so let's see if we can do it. So like they brought him to the guy, and they dressed him up. They brought him to Money, and Money told him like, oh yeah, dress him up like a girl and make him be a girl. And then he was playing with trucks and stuff, and he grew up like, and then he heard when he was 13 that, yeah, you were a boy, and it was a problem, whoops. And the kid ended up killing himself, and his brother killed himself because it's such trauma. And so this was highlighted in this What is a Woman movie because it's such a horrific story. And that was the beginning of the, turning children into the opposite sex. Like that's where it started. And I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that it started with the mutilation of circumcision. If that child wasn't circumcised, then none of that would have happened. and they would have had to
Wow.
find some other story to be the experiment. You know,
Yeah.
maybe it wouldn't have turned out the way it is now. Maybe we wouldn't have Disney trying to teach kids like you can change and change back and it's no big deal, you know. So now, because I got kind of a personal vendetta about this guy, because this is what he says here. Turn it up for you people to listen. So this is his opinion on what we are talking about today here.
Cannot quite do justice.
Here, wait.
As I said, words cannot quite do justice to the enormity of the evil here, the depths of the evil. The people who are pushing this and promoting it are, as I have said many times, and I believe with every fiber of my being, these are among the worst human beings, the ones who are pushing it and promoting it and doing it. 2 kids are among the worst human beings who have ever lived on the planet.
That's true. People that harm kids like that are the worst human beings. And he's talking about turning kids, doctors that cut up little kids and turn them into the opposite sex. So this is his, declaration of how evil it is, right?
So this guy, Matt Walsh, just,
they belong.
Is he like a? I don't know this guy very well.
He's like a right-wing dude. He's got, Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ben Shapiro has this Daily Wire network, and they hired him to be like another guy on the network. And he's like right-wing statist, very, America first, and those lefty losers, and look at how, that type of shit.
I figured it was kind of like that, but I'm just not familiar with this guy. Yeah.
He's just another one of them. But still, he has a personality. People like him, and he did that What Is a Woman movie was very well done. I think that was a very well done film.
In the same category, the Nazi.
So here, I'm going to turn it back. So just a little bit.
2 kids are among the worst human beings who have ever lived on the planet. I mean, they belong in the same category. The Nazi comparisons and all the rest of it are tired and overplayed, but they belong right in that category. In the category of the most monstrous demons to have ever walked the face of the earth.
Right. Yeah.
And there are a lot of other things that we talk about, in our society, a lot of other issues we deal with, other issues that I talk about all the time and that we'll talk about today on the show. But I can tell you right now, and I'm not going to be around to say I told you so, but history books in the future, like this is the only thing they're going to be worried about. With our whole era of history in Western civilization will be defined by this. They will be writing books and history books focused almost entirely on this. Okay, it's like when history books talk about the 1860s in the United States. There are other things that happen besides the Civil War, but the Civil War is the only thing the history books are concerned about in the 1860s.
So genital mutilation has been happening since the beginning of time, since Babylon. I mean, this guy is such a retard. But anyway, we'll keep listening.
Well, when the history books tell of the 2010s and the 2020s, this is what that chapter is going to be about. And there are going to be debates raging among historians for centuries to come, just trying to figure out how could this have happened. They'll be baffled by it. Like, how could this have happened? How did anyone allow it to happen?
How did anyone allow some doctor to cut their own babies? He's talking about how could you allow anybody to chop up your kids? Yeah. Now I'm
living through it. I'm asking.
He's going to read an email now.
The same question.
Okay.
Let's see. Anne says, I want to take you seriously about your crusade against genital mutilation, but you continue to ignore the most common form, circumcision. There's not any point in trying to ban genital mutilation if you're going to make an exception for that. I find this point that I hear sometimes exceptionally annoying.
Whoa, really? It's annoying to him.
And ridiculous.
Oh.
And you're also you're doing a big favor to the left, and maybe that's your point. Maybe that's what you're trying to do.
So it's okay to cut babies like this, but it's not okay to cut babies like that. That's what he's saying. And
Yeah, he's
if
missing the
you
point.
think exactly, if you think that cutting babies' penises is wrong, you're just helping the left.
But this is exactly an analogy that they want to make.
Oh.
In fact, there was someone, I think it was a Tennessee lawmaker yesterday on Twitter, said that our attempts to ban these things in Tennessee is an infringement on the religious freedom of Jews.
Oh, we need to have the freedom to chop our babies because we own we have domination over our babies because the religion has domination over us, and our religion has been doing it since before it was Judaism.
But it couldn't be wrong, you know?
Right. Can't be wrong.
Yeah.
Because he has sons.
Because she's drawing a comparison between circumcision and an actual castration.
Yeah.
So when you do that, that's exactly what they want. They want to say, oh, you see, they're two exactly the same things.
Both of them involve holding the kid down. I mean, actually, one of them's even worse. Circumcision's worse because the kid doesn't want it to be done. And you hold it down against its will and you remove part of its body. Right. It's torture. I mean, what the hell is so different? And the same wiring, the nerve endings and all that, it's the same. When you're severing those nerves, it's going to affect the brain. It's trauma to those nerves.
Yeah,
this guy is
he's just kind of like skimming along here and saying that basically that I guess this is again like this left-right paradigm. Like, these days these right wingers make a little more sense than they used to because the left went so radical, but then they still really are missing so many points.
Yeah, like he's defending genital mutilation. Mm-hmm. But his whole thing is a crusade against genital mutilation. And he looks like a clown. He's a total clown. And everybody should know this. Here, I'm just going to play the last.
So if you're fine with one, you should be fine with the other. But of course, they're not the same thing at all.
Really?
Okay, can you see the difference between?
The difference is he mutilated his own sons this way. Yep. But he would never mutilate his sons that way. See? And he himself has a wall inside. He won't allow it to he doesn't want the knowledge that he himself was held down and abused, tortured, genitally mutilated, or that he instructed doctors to do it to his own kids. He'll never get there.
Right.
He'll never get there. That's why I'm playing this clip. Not because, I mean, I do hate the guy a little bit just because of this. But it's not to like smash, this guy sucks. What I'm showing you is an example of how people cannot think of it. They won't, like, it's so ironic in this case because it's genital mutilation. Legit exactly the same. And he's like, nope, not the same. Nope, you're bad for saying so, because it would be traumatic for him to realize it. So it's like, block it out. Doesn't happen. Not real. And that makes the dad want to do it to his own kid because it's not real. It's not pain, So like, oh, he doesn't feel it. Oh, babies don't feel pain. All these lies, that they tell themselves so that it perpetuates into the next generation. And we see that with SRA, the parents were abused and then they abused their kids and so on and so on. And so this is another example. I mean, this is trauma-based mind control. Like, I can explain more about that if you like. It is satanic ritual abuse. And a lot of the doctors and the hospitals are satanic. A lot of them are cult members. They are actually in the dark occult, and they work there to gather blood or body parts, or to cover up the torture of all the kids that they tortured last night at the ritual. They come into the hospital the next day.
It's a perfect place for them to be, for them to be behind. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Now, that one point back with that guy too that you just played, Matt Walsh.
Right.
I mean, in some ways, like, I don't agree with what they're doing with kids these days and changing their sex, but these kids are thinking they're the other sex. So by their free will, in a way, they're allowing it, but the baby has no choice in the matter. So it's almost in a way worse.
Yeah, that's a huge point. Yes, it is much worse.
Yeah. I mean, I don't agree with what people are doing because kids don't even know who they are. I mean, I would argue that we don't even know who we are till like 30, but or maybe I don't, we still don't know, who knows, but like at the point at least that the kid has a conscious choice in the matter, that's choosing to cut off his dick, or girl's going to get a penis. I don't even know how that even works, but
they cut a big chunk of their arm and then they roll it up like a cannoli, and then they just hang it. They just attach it. It just hangs. No, it's just a flesh thing that hangs. It's really weird. Yeah. And then they got this huge wound on their arm, like everybody can see it. And it's like all the flesh. It goes it's sick. It's really anyway. Gross. Yeah, it is gross. But that's another show. So okay, here's another one. This is Jeff Goldblum on Conan O'Brien. And this is just another example of the way that people minimize and try to.
Jewish gentleman, you are a Jewish man, and are you going to have a bris?
Going to have one. Nobody has one later. Maybe they do. No, we had one early on, but not a bris, meaning the traditional and ritualistic religioso affair, but medically, although it was a question.
As if there's a difference. I mean, come on.
Before.
Right. It's still the same action. You tie them down, you cut them up like.
But finally, we decided upon getting the, what a bris does. You know what it is. I think everybody does.
Bris is the removal of it's a circumcision. The foreskin is removed. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So the doctor.
Thrown out the window,
Our lovely doctor, Randy Harris, who used to play for the Mets.
Good plug.
Before. Really?
I don't know. Yeah, okay.
No, I mean, but he became a doctor. So he said, this is not in any way religious, but I think it's a good idea. I do it good, and you can watch if you want. It's not so nice, but anyway, he did it. He says, but I don't say the traditional blessing. I sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" as I'm doing it. If you want to join in, and we did.
You guys sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and then when he was done with that, it was just.
Well, it's not what you think. Have you ever seen it?
They don't use a deli slicer. Yeah, no, they. I'm sorry.
Did you?
Yeah, it's as gory as a deli slicer. Really, I mean.
Did you do it? Did you do it to your children? No, you have a boy.
You see him thumbing his nose at him like. Andy Richter is the best. He's like, did you do it? And Andy Richter thumbs his nose at him. Let's listen more.
And a girl, that's right. And you didn't do it? Yours is uncircumcised?
My son is uncircumcised.
Really?
I mean, everybody at school, my son's uncircumcised.
So interesting.
I mean, I didn't.
Andy Richter is just a genius. The way that he handles this is what great. Watch this.
It's really more his information to give out, but I guess I screwed up. Sorry, hon.
So you must have researched it, and it's because of the natural way.
Yes.
You want him to look like Daddy?
No. I
don't mean to pry. I don't know.
That's a big point. To look like Daddy. That's a big thing. That's another
right.
Like people that have been cut by that, like they do the same just because in their mind they're like, that's my kid. I don't want him to look different. But anyway, here we'll keep going.
I mean, quite seriously, I am circumcised.
I'm so glad this is going this way.
Yes. No, I'm circumcised, but I don't. I mean,
I imagine so.
Yeah, but yes, yes. Well, I mean, You know, I mean, I'm so obviously a Jew that. No, I mean, I'm circumcised because I was born at a time when it was just, there was no question about it.
Standard in this culture.
Yeah. But with my son, I mean, as I told the doctor, I said he was born perfect. Why change him?
That's very nice.
Yeah.
That's a very nice thing.
Good idea.
Yeah.
That is a very nice thing. Oh,
See,
good idea.
that was tactful. That was pretty
Yes.
tactful. I like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
And now listen how he follows it up.
That reminds me of when
So what I'm saying is you've mutilated your child.
Well, I know the argument. I think it's probably you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I've
There's no
had an
wrong
okay
answer.
time with my cut one. It's been fine. You know, I mean, it's not like it robbed me of anything.
Yes, it did. Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff Goldblum.
So at least Jeff was nice enough to agree. Yeah, you're probably right. You know, like, and he is right. And everybody should speak up and say he was born perfect. Like, it's not necessary. And you mutilated your son. Everybody needs to hear that shit because it's the truth. So that's just an example of how fathers minimize and an example of a good father who was abused as a kid and chose not to do it to his son. And we got to break the cycle.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I come on to shows like yours and preach the word of don't harm your kids, you know.
Yeah.
Because we can all make that choice. That's the one thing. It's not like with a lot of the things that the dark occult is doing to us, like the way, you know, they chemtrail us, they put fluoride in the water, they 5G us, and we're victims in that sense. But with this, they have to ask our permission.
Right.
We have to give our free will consent, because in this age, we still are stewards, or own, I guess, in legal terms, the baby. They can't just do what they want with it. So we are the protectors of this next generation. It's not up to the government to, we're not going to, like, we don't have to make a bill and change things with the government or whatever, because that shit never works. This is the one of the things that we can change, and it is changing slowly. It's changing. When I was a kid, it was like, a lot more people were being circumcised than they are now. So the trend is waning. People are slowly waking up, and so we just got to keep pushing the message and keep bringing this.
I be honest and real personal. Because I am not. I remember growing up, like, asking other kids when I was little if they were, and I started to feel like an outsider. I didn't know what it was, but thank God. But still, yeah.
And that's one of the things, like, a doctor will try to convince a mother to do it, and he'll say, oh, well, he might get made fun of in the gym locker room when he's 12. And that's a perfect reason to mutilate my child's genitalia. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, and just to think, like, how many people are actually going to, like, other than your lover, there's not many people that are going to see your dick. So it's like, it's pretty hidden, you're not out there comparing, or at least I never was. So, I don't know many people that were.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's weirdos everywhere. But,
yeah, there is. Yeah. Sure.
So, like, so here, I got some more. I did a presentation with my wife, Jennifer Rose, and it's titled, His Body, His Choice. And we played some clips in that where there's parents. Maybe we don't need to play that one. Everybody should just check out my channel and look at that presentation, His Body, His Choice.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
It's about 70 minutes. It's like, we did that for Shattering the Illusion, which was a conference presented by my friend James Cordner. And we put this together, and it's really good. We go deep into how the people can't recognize that, it's blind to them, and so it perpetuates. And so that point is a little further explored in that presentation. So I invite everyone to go listen to that or watch that.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Awesome.
I think more people just don't really think about this. That's what it is. But it
Right.
runs really deep.
Yeah, it runs as deep as it gets, because the baby doesn't have a self yet. It's still in a sense it doesn't have a personality yet. So in a way, it's almost like a multiple personality already. It goes from one state of existence to the next and doesn't remember between. It's happy, it's hungry, it's wants to, it's wet diaper, and like all these different things. And it can go from one, a baby kind of, in a sense, it doesn't have a self, and it's building itself from the beginning. And the core of it is all the subconscious input that it receives in the first 6 or 7 years. And the very beginning of those 6 or 7 years is where the very core of the self is structured. So if you can attack the brain and the self of that baby before it even is a self, it incorporates into its mind distrust, and the dissociation reaction is like all of a sudden it realizes, oh, I can dissociate. It teaches the brain to dissociate. It causes distrust with the mother. It breaks the bond. It changes the brain chemically, and the brain never goes back to baseline configuration. It changes us forever. And then when it's so young, it makes us we believe that's part of our personality, and I guess we're going to talk about I've got a clip from Ron Goldman, who wrote the book Circumcision, the Hidden Trauma. He talks about the psychological effects, long-term psychological effects. And I guess I'll play that towards the end.
Sure.
So what circumcision is, it's a lot of pain. It's torture, but really it involves the separation of the foreskin of the prepuce from the glands, the head of the penis. And so that is held on to, it's sealed together, much like your fingernails, in the same way that your fingernails are attached to your fingers. It's fused the same way.
Yeah.
And so they rip that apart from the glands.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's different mechanisms. A lot of times there's a bell or that fits down over the head, and then they pull the foreskin up over that, and then they put a clamp on the outside, and it tightens until it just separates the skin away. There's other ones where it involves a knife, and so then they cut away the skin, and then the wound has to not, because it's a wound, it'll try to retract again, and so the remnants of what's left will kind of curl up onto the head of the penis, and sometimes that will heal to the head of the penis. So the mother or whoever has to retract pretty much every time they change the diaper, and it's a open wound in a dirty diaper, which is so retarded. And babies bleed out a lot because they don't start making blood clotting elements in their blood for first couple days. So that's why they give all babies vitamin K, because it helps their blood to clot. And they think that, I mean, so like this helps the clotting from the circumcision, but some babies don't have circumcision, but they still give vitamin K to everybody so that it covers up the truth that circumcision causes sudden infant death syndrome. Kids bleed out straight up. Like babies will scream to death. They won't breathe anymore and die while the procedure is happening.
Yeah.
They can lose their penis completely. They can cut too much off. They can cut some muscle away. They can cut the head completely away. It can fester and rot, and there's many things that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The Jewish performance, I guess, with all the people, the traditional way they do it, they separate the prepuce from the glands with a sharpened thumbnail.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a dirty. That's not even hygienic. That's disgusting.
Yeah,
I mean,
how hygienic. And then that's the first part. Then they peel it and they cut it, and then they take the wound and they suck the blood from the wound. That's called metzitza. That's an actual practice that happened. It's still happening today, and so it is so horrific and scary. And it introduces much bacteria into this open wound. There's many complications that can happen. So it is not. It's not clean. It's not. Some people think it's cleaner to have it done because they are told that when they're an adult, if they don't clean it enough, then they can get like infections.
right. Yeah, when I was growing up, I was told that I had to pull the skin back at a young age, and the doctor did it for me, and it really
That's
hurt.
wrong. That's wrong.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
it probably fucked me up somewhere. I'm sure it did, probably.
Yeah. At least you still have the movement. They didn't take away the part. It's still attached.
No. But it definitely, I remember that being pretty hardcore. I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's wrong. Doctors don't even understand the anatomy. Like I said earlier, it's fused and it's not supposed to separate. And it separates naturally as you start to have erections and you start to become little babies get erections too, but I mean, like in puberty, it becomes a more regular thing and it's natural. It separates then.
Yeah.
Or it can sometimes separate on its own, like when they're 2 or 3, or like every kid is different, right? Mm-hmm. But it should never be manipulated by the doctor like they did to you. Sometimes when the doctor does that, it tears in the wrong way. And then there's a wound that has to be fixed. And then they're like, oh, now we got to do a circumcision. Well, that's what happened to my grandfather. And my mom knew that. And she knew how painful it was for him to have it done at 13. So she thought, oh, I'll just do it to you now as a baby. That'll be a good idea. But really, babies feel more pain. What was I talking about? Okay, one second.
Separation.
Okay, the separation of the prepuce from the glands, and so that it shouldn't be done by a doctor. And a lot of doctors think they have to do it, but they don't even understand their own body, because that piece was removed. Like, a lot of doctors are males who were circumcised.
Yeah.
And even back into the Victorian age and then the 1800s and stuff, like, circumcision was done to rich children, which even more corroborates with the SRA, because rich kids are traumatized, turn them into psychopaths. What were you saying?
I'm hoping that weed whacker wasn't coming in. Somebody's.
Oh no, I don't.
Okay, good.
I don't hear that. Okay.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about all the edits you got to make now, but I didn't hear it, so it's okay.
Minor.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Cool. So rich families in the 1800s would do it to their kids. So it was almost like a woman who is going to be laying with that man. She sees he's circumcised, and that's like, oh, he's a rich guy.
Oh,
So like there's that hypergamy element to it.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
And people wanted to seem like they're rich, and like, I want to be like the rich. And for some reason, they put Jews on a pedestal. Like they thought that they didn't do crime as much, and they thought that they didn't masturbate, and they thought that they were like a lot better of a society or something. There was a lot of like, in America at least. And so that informed people. And so like they kind of took the traditions of these people. Well, they have a much more calm society. They're much more tribal, and like, you know, we look up to them, so we should do like they do, you know. And they also thought that masturbation was like the root of all vice evils. Like, you know, people are homeless on the street because masturbation. People are drug addicts because masturbation. People are lazy because masturbation.
Wow.
And so, for real,
Yeah.
And they thought, oh, well, if we remove the ability of the outer skin to move up and down, like, then they can't masturbate, right? It's like removing the function of what, you know. And that also, in America, there's a lot more lubes and lotions and stuff sold because all the guys now, they need that because there isn't the lubrication of the extra skin that moves freely. So anyway, so they're removing the ability for the kids to have the skin to move like that, and it removes all the nerve endings of the erogenous area of the penis. Like it's the head of the penis doesn't really have nerve endings. It's not. With gorillas, it does. And the foreskin doesn't really have nerve endings. But with bonobos, the foreskin has all the nerve endings and the head doesn't. And if you look at the way that their societies are, the way the gorillas treat each other and the way that bonobos treat each other. If you know anything about a bonobo. No,
what is a bonobo?
The bonobo is as a primate, I think it's an ape who I forget where they live, Africa maybe, but their society, how they interact with each other, they just bang each other constantly. Like instead of like the way that we do handshake, they would have sex. That's just how bonobos are. They're just constantly with each other, and the women are putting it, you know, the females are putting their butt up, and then the dudes are doing it, and like, that's just how bonobos are. People should look it up. And doctors have found that the foreskin is where, so like that, the function of it creates more pleasure bonding and like oxytocin release of endogenous like love chemicals, right? But with a gorilla, they just hold the female down, pound it out, you're done. Like, I'm the master, and it's like about domination and violence, and that's how you win a mate. But with the bonobos, it's all about like the feelings and the, you know, having, you know, experiencing this. Yes, sensual. Yeah, right. Yeah. So like that's a little clue into what the foreskin can do to the bonding between a male and a female. And also the way that the skin connects to the labial folds of the female vagina, it like connects like a suction cup. And then the skin moves, or the inner shaft moves, but the outer shaft doesn't like just saw away at the woman's vagina. It's not like just like pound and pound. There's like a lot more going on inside. You know, the folds are folding, and they're they work in unison together.
And so that would explain why,
Uh,
like in porn, the man's always like, smacking it, just like pounding
Yep,
down,
smashing away.
Yeah.
And a lot of when we were growing up, a lot of the porn stars, pretty much all the ones that I'd ever seen and the ones that I'd seen were circumcised.
Right.
Just because, well, porno is made by Satanists too, and Jews.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So like they want to push that circumcision is normal, and like a lot of straight guys, the only other dicks they ever see are the ones in the movies, when they're jerking off watching.
Sure. Yeah.
So like that, then it becomes normal. They see porn again and again, and like, oh, that's cut dick with a big line around it, and like and the head is keratinized because it's exposed all the time. It has to get tough, and like when you're working with your hands all the time and you don't wear gloves and you get like calluses.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens to the head of a penis when it doesn't have a foreskin to protect it. It's like removing your eyelids and like having to go around with no eyelids all the time.
There's a reason why we're born with it. It's a
exactly.
Function.
Yeah. Every male mammal, and even females have a foreskin. Like a females all have a clitoral hood to protect.
That's true. Yeah.
And it's just like that's how all mammals are. And why is it that humans think that necessary to remove that? And it goes back to the cultural lies of the myths that go back to the ancient religions. I don't know if you wanted to get into that. I guess we could start talking about
some of that. Yeah. I've always heard Babylon, but I also read a little bit about Egypt too.
Well, Egypt, as far as Egypt goes, I think that the Passover blood, that is actually about, I think when I read it, I think of it as like that they're putting like the firstborn male is the one that has to die in that story. So the angel of death visits upon, Moses calls the angel of death to do the Passover, right? And it's passing over the houses that have blood on their door. So all these houses did the blood ritual, and their firstborn son doesn't have to die.
Yeah.
So think about that, really. So if you understand about the beginning of Yahweh cults, Yahweh, even in the book now, Yahweh says, on the 8th day, sacrifice the male, the firstborn male of your cows, of your chickens, of your own blood, your own children. You must sacrifice the firstborn male. And the ancient Yahweh cults would build a Moloch fire, and they would sacrifice their babies into this fire. And that was ancient infanticide. It's basically ancient birth control, and they would do sex rituals at certain days. And then these sex rituals would create babies, and these babies were fed to Moloch, like the fires of Moloch. And Yahweh is Baal. Yahweh is the Lord of the Moloch fire that they are sacrificing those babies to. So we know about this from the Canaanites, and we've seen the Tophets with the bones of the babies burned.
Yeah.
So this is the truth. And so this is the beginning of Judaism. And Judaism and the Yahweh cults adopted it from other tribes. Like it came from before. Like, so this sacrifice of the firstborn male on the 8th day, that is what Yahweh requires. That's part of it. So when the Passover ghost of Angel of Death is visiting Egypt, it sees that those certain houses did the blood ritual. So it is ritual magic. It's ceremonial magic where they do, the blood is involved, right?
Yeah.
And then we can look at the Jesus thing and like, oh, they drank his blood and that whole, but we don't need it. But anyway, so the story of Abraham, you got he was gonna kill his son, Isaac. And then the angel says, no, don't kill him, it's okay, but God wants you to chop the end of his dick. And then he's like, oh, okay. And then Abraham does it to himself, and he's like, everybody that's a Jew has to do this. And in a way, it's like, it's a substitution for killing the baby. Instead of sacrificing the baby all the way, you get to keep the baby, but you just sacrifice the manhood of that baby.
Yeah.
And in the old days, there was a lot of infections and the kid could die, and like circumcision was pretty brutal, you know? So in a way, instead of attacking the result of your own fertility, you're attacking the fertility of the next generation ahead of you. And here, I've got a...
Well, I was just going to say, this Yahweh character, I mean, I've always questioned this guy. I mean, he's obviously one of these gods with a little g, you know, these one of these Nephilim or these Anunnakis or whatever they were, because this is not coming from divinity. This is like a jealous god,
right?
You know, all the emotions of this god certainly don't sound like something coming from the all-knowing. So I've always question it, especially the Old Testament of the Bible, just because it's all built off this Yahweh character, if I'm correct. I think the whole thing, just about.
Yeah, right. Yes. And like the reason America circumcises is because we are so enmeshed, I guess is a word, with the Jewish people.
Hollywood also.
Yeah. Yep. And the government and all the people that abuse children, you know, like abusing kids goes like circumcision is abuse to children, you know, pedophilia is abuse to children. And when they, it creates a lack of empathy. It helps to create a psychopath in the victim. We might get into that later, but so talking about so here's a quote from Leonard Glick. In summary, the father offers his son's foreskin a bloody sacrifice for what may have been a substitute for child sacrifice, because it's performed on the 8th day. Even now, a Jewish baby, they're allowed to be with their mother intact for 7 days, and then on the 8th day, they gotta take the foreskin off. That's the rule. And the 8th day is when Yahweh took the firstborn male of every Yahweh adherent to that religion. So that exactly aligns. It's proof that it is a substitution. So he declares acknowledgement of paternity, readiness to submit the child to a perilous procedure, avowal of sexual restraint of his own and his son in the future, intention to raise him as a conforming member of the male-centered collective, and in summary, offers his submission to the elder's will. If you can override your own innate, like, we are built to protect our kids. We love our kids.
Yeah.
And this blood sacrifice is requiring for us to go against our own natural love instinct and allow fear to be implanted into the baby.
Yeah.
Like now, from now on, that baby can't trust, and it's afraid. The whole world can tie it down and cut its body up.
And that's huge, really, when you think about
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
man.
I mean,
And
just
that love,
implications.
like the love of a parent with its child, that bond of a mother with its baby is so important to the world. Like that's our first relationship. That's the primary relationship. And if you look at all the psychopaths in history, like all the really wacky ones, they all had mommy issues. And this like cuts away the bond between the mother and the child.
Oh yeah.
You know, a lot of circumcised kids, they won't latch to their mother's breast. They just stare off into nothing. Sometimes they cry incessantly, cannot be consoled. And then the mother just gives up trying to console the baby, like, oh, nothing I can do. And then that further divides. Oh, then when the baby sees the mother's not even going to try to console you anymore, like, oh, now I'm totally alone, and that fear and loneliness and disconnection is the worldview of that baby. And then it grows up in the religious orders, and it has to follow orders, and it has to, comply with the priest who sucked the blood out of its wounded penis. I mean, so, okay.
That's pretty fucked up. Yeah, I can't. That's all I can say. It's
yeah. So like that, it is trauma-based mind control.
Yeah.
That's why, like, the SRA, satanic ritual abuse, requires the abuse of babies. You have to abuse them while they're young for the function of the brain to be wired the way that they want.
right.
Like, it's not like they're all perverts. I mean, they all are perverted because they're psychopaths. Their brains don't work properly, and whatever. They're perverts and evil, but it's necessary to rape the kids. Like, that's why they need to have kids for the ritual. They need to have kids to murder in front of these other kids that they're trying to program. They need kids to have blood. That's why they're getting all these Mexican pregnant women, just shipping them over the border, and like putting them in. It is a currency, and it's beyond money. It's like, this is what the dark occultists trade in: blood and organs. And it's some of the blackest pill stuff.
Yeah.
But really, if they can make satanic ritual abuse light and put it on everybody, then that's perfect for their mind control. Because look at 9/11. That was trauma, and they put it on all of us.
That thing over and over again. The building getting hit. Yep.
That's right. Never forget.
Yeah, never forget.
Right. And it became part of us. And then now we think of, like, our worldview has changed, and everything is different now. Like, it's a new normal,
Yeah.
And like, it's that trauma and that ritual of 9/11 has changed all of us, because we saw the trauma. We experienced trauma light just watching,
Yeah.
So this circumcision is SRA light, like Bud Light, as opposed to the regular. It's like satanic ritual abuse given to almost all the males of our society, and it's considered normal, just like the dark occult considers killing babies and drinking blood is normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's routine. It's considered, the name of it in the hospital is routine infant circumcision. It's the same as like ritual infant abuse, So yeah, it is. And like I said earlier, the mental walls that become created are similar to SRA, the way that it functions in the brain. I've recognized that as true, and others have as well. There's many books about how it's a bloodletting sacrifice ritual, and we all know that those rituals are done for the purpose of influencing the minds of others. I mean, Satan, Lucifer, whatever might exist, there may be non-corporeal entities that they're making pacts with and doing whatever.
Yeah.
That may be true, but really the blood, the pain, and the trauma affects the minds of their victims, and the other children that are watching those kids get sacrificed are affected. That traumatizes them too, just like we had to watch the people jumping out of the buildings on 9/11. That traumatized us, just like those kids that are watching the other kid get murdered. That's trauma. And so like it puts us, and when we are like, when everybody is traumatized, it creates a bond, like a subconscious bond of like, oh, we're all victims in this victim cult. And that's another reason why it's so like fused with the Jewish culture, because like it creates an us and them type mentality, like we are a cohesive cult of victims together.
Yeah, totally. And I wonder what that has to do, like if you think about the American male, and you might put him out there with the rest of the males in the world that don't circumcise at least as much in their culture. I wonder what the difference might be. Maybe we're a little more violent. I mean, just I don't know.
I have a clip I can play here. Let's see if I can get it going.
It seems like that would make sense in a way, because there's already some deep trauma there. And
exactly.
You know.
So that moves us into the next point, the last major point that I wanted to get to. And like any other questions, just go ahead and cut me off and like the pun is terrible. I didn't mean that pun there, but yeah, just interrupt me.
I just got it now.
Just interrupt me, and like speak up. Like I'm easy.
Right.
So here, I'm gonna share screen there. This is Ronald Goldman, who wrote a book titled "Circumcision: The Hidden Trauma," and he goes into the long-term effects, the mental effects, psychological. This is a little clip from a movie, American Circumcision. Ronald Goldman participated and gave interviews to this movie. This is extended cut, like, other like clips of the movie that didn't really make it in.
Oh, right. Okay. Like,
was in the medical literature.
Right, let's see.
Well, the first research was in the medical literature. There have been a lot of studies on circumcision. Quite a few of them have studied the pain. And they found that there's no question that this is extremely painful for the infant. And they found that you can't necessarily depend on the infant's vocal response or behavioral response as a reliable indicator of pain, because what happens is sometimes the baby withdraws in a state of shock. So what they measured was, for example, hormone levels in the blood, cortisol, for example, which increases by a factor of 3 or 4 times during circumcision. They measure heart rate, breathing rate, things like that. And they find that the physiological measures are more reliable. And they support the conclusion that circumcision is extremely painful. So there's that part of it. There was some literature on behavioral changes in the infant after circumcision. Sometimes the infant would be more irritable, extended crying. Sometimes infants would withdraw. And they found that the overwhelming majority of infants who were circumcised exhibited some change in behavior. And this is significant because it shows that it's not a temporary thing. There haven't been too many studies on long-term effects of circumcision on infants, but there was one significant study in 1997 when they looked at the difference in response to vaccinations when the infants were 6 months old. And they found that the infants that were circumcised had a stronger response to the pain associated with the vaccination than the infants that were not circumcised.
Yeah.
So that's huge right there. We
Right.
are wired differently now that we're cut and abused. Now our pain responses are more reactive. So when they cause pain to us in the future by like injecting us with poison or whatever, like,
Yeah.
we're going to feel that pain more because our brains are wired already for pain. So here, like, we're going to keep playing.
Size. And the investigators explain this by saying this is a result of neurological effects from the circumcision and a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. So those are, some of the significant studies that stood out. But in the psychological literature, very little, if anything, on this. So that's where I chose to do much of my work. I started looking at definitions of trauma. For example, the American Psychiatric Association publishes a manual, diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders. And in there they define trauma. It's an extreme experience. It involves fear, helplessness, and can sometimes involve torture, extreme pain, and they also categorize symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. There are 3 groups of symptoms, so to speak. The first group includes things like re-experiencing the trauma, having physiological responses to anything resembling the trauma, or psychological upset. For example, some men get very uncomfortable just with the word circumcision. It has actually a bodily effect on them, the psychological effect. Other men have told me they're very uncomfortable around knives and scissors. So that's an example of symptoms from the first group. The second group involves avoidance and emotional numbing. So these symptoms would include things like avoiding anything that relates to circumcision, avoiding even saying the word, avoiding any articles or information about circumcision. So I view this not just as a symptom of circumcised men, but it's also a cultural symptom, because culturally we tend to avoid information about circumcision, learning about circumcision. We can talk a little later about how the media avoids reporting on circumcision. But basically, we avoid the topic and learning about it. And the emotional numbing connected with this can become a generalized kind of a response where people have a general lack of emotional expression. So that's talking about the second group of.
That's another thing that they're trying to do to us. I mean, look at, they want us to lose our emotions and our ability to feel, sever us from our limbic system. They like, think about the dark occult. They sacrifice their care. They do cremation of care rituals, and it creates a psychopath if they can remove our empathy.
Yeah, and the PTSD he mentioned too. That's a word I've been just thinking, like, what is this? Oh yeah, it's PTSD. A lot of people are going to have that through our whole society.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like post-traumatic stress disorder. It's like that's the desired reaction that the dark occult wants from us. They want us to be shell shock. It's, so that we just don't do anything, like, oh, we're deer in headlights whenever there's somebody wants to attack us. We're just like, and then they roll right over us. They, do their whatever ritual. They, tell us whatever lie, and we just accept, oh, I guess that's true.
It's that way now. Like, you see people wearing their masks now. They're scared. They're, I mean, like, the cases are climbing. Oh no. I see it a lot now. It's like, again.
It's like they're wired that way because of the last 2 years and because of the trauma of wearing the mask and having all of us shun each other and hate each other and like not go to work. It affected us all, and it put us through a certain amount of trauma. So now some people not all, thankfully. Some people, once they say the word, oh, we got another variant, the you know, the victims that have been abused so much, they just snap to orders. Okay, yes, sir, I'll do what you want because it saved my life and I'm afraid. And because that fear is like in the core of them and their worldview now. So circumcision is like such a huge tool for the Satanists to create, to wield our society into a into Satanism light, you know, like what Passio talks about with like how a lot of people, because of the structure of society with the money and stuff, they are de facto Satanists because they're chasing money, and this whole structure is built by Satanists to, you know, to make it an evil place. You know what I mean? Like because we go along. Yes, little like Satanism lit light, and for everybody to, and then once everybody is immoral and wrong, and once everybody is traumatized the same, then we'll all agree to, okay, yeah, we're all evil. Let's just be evil together. Yay, Lucifer. You know, like it's kind of simple, but it's kind of the gist of how it goes.
Post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. And the third group includes things like irritability and anger.
That's me, dude. I just, and the last one, the avoidance and the emotional numbing, like, it's just, you know, and then I don't mean to talk about myself, but let's just keep going here.
And there, I've heard from men quite directly how angry they are about being circumcised, and that some of them even carry around some hate in connection with having been circumcised. I counsel a young man who was very angry at his parents for choosing to have him circumcised, even though he's had conversations with them. They've said they're sorry. Just very difficult for him to get over his anger at having been circumcised. So again, I'm looking at circumcision as a trauma, so I can relate the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder to the symptoms that are being reported by some circumcised men. And that's something that's new to the issue, and I'm trying to focus attention on that. Some of the symptoms that some circumcised men are reporting include distrust, fear of intimacy, shame, sexual anxieties. Again, I said discomfort around circumcision. I'm not saying here that all circumcised men are going to have these symptoms, but what's important is to acknowledge that some circumcised men have these symptoms. Much more research is needed to determine how prevalent these symptoms are. But let's not ignore that these symptoms exist for some circumcised men. They have a lot to say about you know, what's of concern to them. There have been surveys of circumcised men, but they haven't been the random sample kind of survey. They've been surveys of men who have come forward to say, you know, I'm distressed about having been circumcised, and then they're asked to report on what that distress is about. So that's relatively new information that we want.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know if you wanted to comment before I do.
Just the quick to anger part, I could see.
Yeah.
That.
America, dude.
Yeah.
It's like the Hulk, raw, like, you know, all of a sudden.
Right.
Yep. And it's like uncontrollable. And like a lot of times, here, let's stop the share. A lot of times in like with myself personally, I'll like something that is traumatic to me or is emotionally distressing to me, I will try to not feel it, you know. And then if somebody's confronting me with something that I don't want to face, I'll react like, I gotta defend myself, you know. And then the anger comes up as like a defense.
Yeah.
And I'll just like cut a person down with my words, like rah. And I get like, and when I first started doing shows about this, like I just put out episode 93 of my show, and like when I was up to like episode 21, I was trying to get Jennifer to go on the show with me, and she's like, no. So finally I was like, I did 20 episodes, damn it, I'm gonna do this. So, and then I went and I did it by myself, and I just yelled at the camera, and I had to stop because I was talking about it so much, and it affected me so hard. Like my fingers were like I was shaking, and my hands, I couldn't curl my fingers in anymore. They were just like, ugh. And it was like my physiology was changing. My heart was racing, and just talking about it. And I was becoming angry, and I was becoming defensive, and I was just by myself, talking about the subject. And I had to stop, and I had to go walk the dog and smoke a joint, and then I had to come back and then, and finish. But I couldn't. I just like it because I'm wired like your body remembers, and the SRA victims will tell you this too, like Jay Parker and Carrie Olahe and these people that I've talked to. They like. Thomas Graham is a body worker. He does like massage and stuff, and he helps SRA victims by doing massage because their bodies hold the trauma. Like they have a body memory, and so your body will react without your brain being able to control it, because it's trying to protect itself. It remembers, even though you don't remember when you were a baby.
It remembers. Yeah.
It does, and it reacts against your will. It's just wired that way. And yeah, so I've got one more clip of Ron Goldman.
I mean, I can say though, for myself,
please.
I have those same sort of things too, avoidance of a lot of things, and I actually didn't, but I think being raised around people that were like that made me a bit like that too. I mean, it's a societal norm too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we all just suppress and we just, do drugs instead, or like take Prozac or something, or like, and they go to a doctor and get a label like, oh, I am this, I have this mental, like not you, like not how, but some people go to that extent. They can't control themselves, and they have, there's a lot of traumas that we all experience trauma. It's like, there's a time in our life, in everybody's life, when who knows what it may be. And I believe that pretty much all mental issues come from trauma. Like if you learn about anybody that is like, and you learn about like there's this popular YouTube channel now. It's a Soft White Underbelly. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this guy.
No way. That's so synchronistic. I just found out about that 2 nights ago.
Oh, really? Wow, yeah, that's great. Yeah, he's doing a book. Okay.
Yeah, he was walking around Skid Row in LA.
Yeah.
And interviewing people.
Right.
Only I found him through another guy, and then I went to his channel, and wow.
It's like he's very empathetic, and he's a very good photographer. He's good with the lighting, and like he doesn't change. He just lets them be themselves, and lets them express. And it's like a study of mental health, really. And you can see them, they're living on Skid Row, and what really happened to these kids and these people. And like all of them were abused as kids, and all of them had a trauma, and all of them were trying to escape that, like do the, forget, and like, and it's like they're wired to do that there, because they're not facing what, so because of that, and it's really, you can learn a lot. He's got a wide variety of people, but really it's a good, like the main theme, like everybody just brings it up themselves, is like, they didn't have friends, they were abused as kids, they got terrible parents, and and circumcision is just another on the pile of the child abuse that every kid has to endure, And then they like will end up being, all of us are going to end up with all that trauma, like messed up in some way. Some of us like survive and become, you know, good people, you know, successful adults, whatever.
Yeah.
But we have to know ourselves to do the shadow work and to learn where our trauma has affected it, like what the trauma was and what it is that why do I react this way? Why, you know, how do I control myself? Like,
Yeah.
we can't be an adult if we don't learn, you know, and if we are just acting and not, if we're just reacting to stimulus, then we are right where the government and the dark occult and the Satanists want us, because all they got to do is this, they got this big fishbowl. They can take a wrench and bang on that side, and all the fish will go together all to the other side,
Right,
and they
right.
bang on that side, and they all run to the other. So it's perfect. This is how they wire us for control, and trauma is their main weapon of mind control. And the more I learn about the dark occult, the more I learn about satanic ritual abuse, the more I recognize it in our society. It is, like I said, Satanism light. You know, it's a lesser version. I mean, they're not, you know, dragging us under Disneyland to rape us and, you know,
Yeah.
this would, like they do to Kathy O'Brien or something, but they are traumatizing us all.
Yep.
And circumcision, if they can convince a mother to give her baby away to this dark occult priest who's gonna chop give him the most pain, you know, then they totally have that person under mind control. Yep. Just like if they see you, if they can convince you to wear a mask on your face, even though it says on the box, this does not protect against virus, but the news says like you should do it anyway. It's like proof that they are totally under mind control. Right. So like, that's why the ritual of the bris milah, with the grandfather holds down the legs and the father holds down the arms of the baby, and then they allow the dude to like mutilate the child that they're supposed to love and protect, and then everybody claps and they all have snacks. You know, it's so evil.
It's sick.
Yeah. So I got one more of okay. Ron Goldman was at a screening of American Circumcision, which is a great documentary everybody should see.
Yeah, I gotta have to check that out myself. Yeah, American Circumcision.
Yes, I think it was on Netflix for a while, and if you want, I'll send you the file.
Yeah, sure.
Direct to your email. But everybody should check it out, American Circumcision. And Ron Goldman was participating. He gave interviews. And this was a live screening from Boston, Mass. And he was there to give Q&A with the audience after. And so this is a little segment I clipped out and it's about the psychological effects, long-term effects. So here we go. One second.
It's crazy to think how many people are walking around with trauma. I mean, we can't avoid, the world it's a school for the hard knocks. We can't avoid everything, but like this extra satanic trauma. So many of us that have it. So many.
Yeah. And like I said before, since it is a trauma, we don't want to think about it. We want to put it behind a memory wall. So it automatically goes into our subconscious. Our conscious mind can't, you know, and that's why with the extreme that they do to SRA victims, it even creates a different personality that can be programmed. But to us, it puts it behind amnesia. So like my dad was telling me about a month ago or whatever, that like I was talking to him about circumcision and like how I did this presentation or whatever, and he knows my work, and like I don't know if he's seen it all, but it dawned on him recently, like he's like 78 or some shit, you know, and he told me on the phone he's like, I never thought of it. I never even thought of it. And I've got 2 brothers. Like, we've had 3 boys in this, and he never thought of it. And I forgive him. I forgive my mother. Like, but it's just like he was saying about how, so like, he's got a corgi, and corgis they usually clip the tails. And somebody was saying to him, oh, are they, like, it was a kid, and they were like, are they born with no tail? And he had to explain to this kid about, no, they cut it off. And then the kid's like, oh no. And my dad's like, yeah, it's bad. And then it dawned on him after all the work that I've done. And now he's like, wait a minute, why is it not okay for dogs, but it is okay for babies, humans? And then he finally thought about it, and it's so important for people, even people that aren't going to have kids, or maybe they're old, or even they got a vasectomy and they're never going to have a kid, but everybody talks to each other. And it's very important for everybody to understand and to think about it, because this amnesia wall happens. People don't think about it, and it keeps happening. And and like, same thing with the child abuse and pedophilia. Like, everybody keeps it a secret. Nobody talks about it, and it keeps happening.
Yeah.
It has to be exposed. People have to know the horrific trauma that it is. And then, like, stop, basically stop allowing it to happen. Yeah. So here, this is some of the Q&A with Ron Goldman.
Psychological stuff that men face on this, in terms of like how men heal around this issue, because there's not a lot of resources for men.
Sure. This is a trauma. And my primary book is called Circumcision, the Hidden Trauma. And the trauma is an overwhelmingly painful experience. And we tend not to be very sensitive to infants' feelings, because we don't remember what it's like to be an infant. And it's a lot more comfortable for us as adults to deny that we're causing any pain, let alone trauma, to an infant. So this trauma has various aspects, and one of the most serious ones, it disrupts the relationship between the child and the mother. That is very serious. That is our primary relationship. Of course, we grow and develop inside our mothers. There's a connection and relationship before birth. So for a child to go through a circumcision, the child learns instinctively he cannot trust his mother to take care of him. He doesn't feel safe with his mother. His mother is not sensitive to how he feels. She's allowed this to happen. So he has to repress those feelings. Sometimes infants withdraw in shock. Now, when one represses feelings, it has a general effect, as I said briefly in the film. That means we're insensitive to a lot of feelings, not just the ones about circumcision, because we need these defenses to keep the circumcision horrible feelings repressed. So we grow up as men who are circumcised, generally, having less sensitivity to our feelings, because those defenses are there holding back the traumatic feelings. And when we're less sensitive to our feelings, we're less sensitive to others' feelings. Reduces our empathy. And there was a preliminary research study on this, studying the feeling sensitivity of men who are circumcised compared to men who are not circumcised. And they found a significant increase in insensitivity for men who are circumcised. And it makes sense psychologically. It even makes sense instinctively. How can we survive this kind of thing without repressing our feelings? And then that's going to have a generalized effect on us as human beings, being sensitive or insensitive to others. So we have a cultural problem here. We have a cultural trauma. And generally speaking, there's all parts of the spectrum here in terms of human sensitivity. But generally speaking, we tend to be less sensitive to the feelings of others in this country than, say, the European countries, where where they're taking care of each other a lot better than we tend to take care of each other here. Here, we tend to be more competitive. We tend to be thinking about our own welfare and what's in it for us, rather than how can we provide for the general good, the common good.
So he just described that America is satanic and doesn't have emotional connections to others. Like that's,
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. And that competitive behavior.
Yeah.
I always thought maybe, someone could probably pin it on capitalism or, something like that. But honestly, it's just in America really that it has that really like insensitive and competitive behavior that's really ramped up. I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at the Wall Street and, and look at how that is. And, everybody drinks coffee here and everybody works like 12 hours a day. Like, and the capitalism's a great idea if it was actual, like if everybody had equal standing and there weren't huge corporations, the capitalism that we have is almost the same as China. It's not really.
It's not even. It's like It's what do they call that? I'm drawing a blank right now, but
it's
venture
like
capitalism. It's like it's way morphed.
Crony capitalism.
Crony. Yeah.
And the idea of I can be rich too. Like it makes us keep on like running the wheel, and if we suppress our emotional pain, then we can get up and get out there and keep working, it's survival. Like we're in a traumatized world and we're all trying to survive here, because it's rough out there. And if you like, I'm paycheck to paycheck, you know what I mean? And, if I slip up, then, oh shit, there's no food, it's a tough world. And so, there's a lot of traumas from all angles, and we have to compete to survive. And we're raised in these schools where we have to compare ourselves to all the other kids, and like, look, I have an A and you have a B, and I'm better than you, and like and then and everybody's the same age group, and so they all have to compete for attention from the teacher, and there's a lot of levels.
So messed up, and the popular kids and the preppies and the jocks and the nerd, all these categories people fall into, and
and like, I was traumatized like this and you weren't, you were traumatized like that, and like, you don't look the same as me and I'm gonna make fun of you or whatever. Like it's there, tribalism and competitiveness and like gnashing teeth, anyway, we'll keep talking here. Keep going with the clip.
So again, there's very little study about this, because in this country, we want to find a study that shows a benefit for circumcision. That's the study that gets the funding. That's the study that gets the media attention. And the study is to look for the negative effects. Who's going to pay for that? So we do the best we can based on our resources, but it's very difficult. On the other hand, do we need a study to find out whether we should be doing this or not? Just watch a video and trust your gut, trust your feelings, trust your common sense. Mothers, trust your maternal instinct. It isn't that difficult.
Can men heal from that trauma you said?
To varying degrees. And I think the most effective therapy is experiential therapy. No talk, in my opinion, no talk therapy. It can be a little bit of help, but it isn't going to be a significant, because we're talking about emotional problems here. The repression and the insensitivity, and feelings don't change from talking. I mean, we can understand, but somebody said once, understanding is the booby prize. We really need to get back to our feelings, our natural feelings. We were born to have feelings. Infants have more feelings, more sensitive to their feelings than adults are. And in order to survive in adult culture, they tend to get defended. And that's how we survive in a relatively insensitive cultural environment. So have I answered your question? Yeah. So experiential therapies can be very effective. in helping us. Actually, people have relived circumcision, discharged the feelings that have been repressed, and feel a sense of relief and more emotionally sensitive going on from there. But it's a process. It isn't going to happen in one session.
Yeah.
So he's talking about experiential, like talking therapy doesn't work. And that's because when it happened to us, we didn't talk yet. Like,
oh, makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, that part of us that is walled off doesn't know words, and it just knows this experience feeling in its body, and that's what is stored. So he's talked about reliving the circumcision. He's also mentioned reliving it through hypnosis can help.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yep.
It scares me. I can't imagine reliving it. You know, but some people have done that to help to discharge that anger and that you know, emotional trauma. And like Thomas Graham, one of my previous guests on my show, he does body therapy with massage on people that have been traumatized. Like, I mean, I don't know if nobody's gonna like massage that part of your, you know, anatomy.
No.
It's kind of, it's a private part. But what I'm saying is that, like, you know, it's not like you have to. It's getting weird. I don't know. Excuse me, but I don't know where I'm going with this. But basically, it's like Jay Parker has the NFT, like the tapping thing, like it. Where,
oh, right, yeah.
Like your body, like needs to release that, you know, and it's not like, you know, it's not like go crank your yank, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like, it's a different kind of, you know, but it's. I'm not the psychologist, so you know, I can't really describe it, but experiential therapy is what it's called. And people should look into that because maybe it will help some of the listeners that, you know, I discovered this about myself. Like, I always knew that I was circumcised, but I didn't know that it was such a trauma in my life. And I didn't know that I had other birth trauma. I knew that the cord was around my neck, and like, you know, like 3 times it was like extra tight, and then I had to go to ICU. But then I was just told that when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, whatever. And then like,
you were talking about yourself, or
yeah, myself.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
like, so I kind of knew about it, but I didn't think about it. And then because I repressed that too. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and I always knew that because I, you know, every time I pee, I can see that it's, you know, like have been mutilated or whatever. But like, it didn't dawn on me until I started the shadow work of like understanding myself, and then you know, hallucinogens, and you know, working with my own emotions, and thinking it out and learning more about the mind and emotions and trauma, and learning more about humans and how we work, and discovering my own problems, I guess. But you know, this is a journey of healing and understanding, and now it's not involuntarily just reacting like, oh, what's my body doing? Why are my fingers like this? You know, why am I heart racing? You know, with understanding, there's healing, and with doing this, like speaking out about it and doing the action of spreading the words of like, this is the truth of it. It is trauma. It can kill your child. Sudden infant death syndrome happens. They can die days later. So like, people need to know the true risk. When people go to the hospital doesn't really tell you what the real, true, informed consent. The hospital's like, oh, it's just cosmetic. There is no function for it. Might as well get rid of it. Everybody else had it done. You know, they give you all these, and the mom's like, okay, whatever. She's just been through a birth. You know, it's a big experience where she's not really. And anyway, so hospitals, it's routine in hospitals they put it on the list, even if you
Yeah, they
don't
do.
ask for it.
Yeah.
Like, so it's, and we all know hospitals are run by some of them. Like there's a lot, like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of dark occult that is connected to hospitals, and that whole, the way that, the Rockefeller medicine, like Rockefeller is connected to these dark occult, like they are, they bought their way into the families, like,
there's a lot of symbolism they use too that is straight from dark occult.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And,
The whole industry.
bloodletting, child sacrifice is dark occult ceremonies. That is the dark occult ritual, to kill a thing you love and then drink its blood and eat its flesh, like they do every week with the Christian ceremony, the Catholic ceremony.
Yeah.
It's the same. Like if you can kill your little baby, if you can allow it to be bloodlet sacrifice, it's total mind control. It's domination of the mind and the will, and it's adhering to the cult, and it's proving your own allegiance to the cult. And as an anarchist and somebody that values my own self-sovereignty and autonomy, bodily autonomy, this is my body, my choice,
Yep.
it's so important. And if we can recognize that parents don't have the right to circumcise their babies.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Parents think it's their choice. It's not. It's their duty to say, no, leave our boy intact, because that is allowing your son to own his body.
Right.
And that if you love your kid, that's the only choice. Your job is to protect your baby. Mother's job is to protect her baby. And mothers are the ones that choose. If dad can't recognize that it's trauma and dad wants him to look like daddy and he's going to do it and mommy says no, the court goes with mom. That's how it always works. The mom is the one who is the ultimate. Sometimes fathers try to sue. There are cases where fathers have won.
It's
but
rare, and
in most cases, right. In most cases, mom gets final word. So even if you have to take your baby and run, that's okay. You just do that, because who cares about the courts? It's your job to save your baby. And it's my job to tell you about it. And I thank you so much for having me on your show, to allow me, like I said, it helps heal me to talk about it to others. And I appreciate the chance to do so. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you on, and it's really a cultural problem. It's what it is. Like he summed it up by saying it is. Circumcision is a cultural problem. It's just one of those deep hidden factors that in our deep hidden causal factors in our society that contributes to this suffering that we don't need to experience on planet Earth.
That's right. Yeah, it's the worst suffering. Babies feel 3 times more pain than adults.
Yeah. They don't have any way to get it out.
Right. And it changes them forever. Like I said earlier, they are, and what we do as a society to the most helpless, to our own family, to our own loved ones, is a very good barometer of how loving a society we are. And if we're gonna mutilate our own babies, whoa, we got to pump the brakes and go the other way, because
we're just repeating.
I don't want to be. I don't want to be in a society that thinks it's cool to chop up little babies. You know what I mean? It's up to us to change it. Yeah.
We can do it, though. I mean, we can make a whole new society by avoiding so many of these things, and hopefully we can. And hopefully this is just one of those many things that are in society that we ignore and just accept. And it has to.
We have been. but
Yeah.
your listeners now can't ignore
No,
because they
no,
heard
they
it.
can't know. They just
It
heard,
went in their ears and now it's in there. So
they
it's
just heard
gonna...
2 hours of circumcision, so they should know.
Right.
Yeah.
And we didn't keep, I wasn't like getting into the bloody gore, because if you want to learn, it is bloody gore. Like, holy
yeah.
crap. Like, there's pictures and stuff you can, if you want to, like, it's gross. So
I
I'm
can
trying
imagine.
to do my best to, like, to really give the full range of what it is without, like, scaring people off by, like, oh, they put a hole in the whole thing and it pees out there and they're like, oh, it gets infected. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm just saying, like, I've tried my best to make it so that everybody can, like, share it. It's not that scary of a thing. And yes, we do talk about the reality of Satanism, but it's, you know, at least we're not like, yeah, it's gross and scary.
It is gross. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
I think the same thing might need to happen in some of these Northern African countries with the female genital mutilation too. Yeah.
Yes. And the way that the females perpetuate it amongst their daughters, and they block out in their mind that it is trauma, and they think it's like, and there are rumors of that they share, like, oh, if a male's penis touches the clitoris, then it'll fall off. Like, oh, we better cut it off, the girl. And like,
Wow.
it's the same, like, insanity.
Yeah.
Because it is such a deep trauma. They have to use insane cognitive dissonance to cover up what they can't think about, because it's trauma. That's why trauma is such a huge tool in the toolbox for the Satanists, to change us, to make us slaves.
It is. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the only way we can do it is start talking about it and get people to realize that it's right here.
That's right.
John, thanks for coming on and sharing this. It's been helpful for me too. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's my pleasure. And,
yeah.
You're
well,
welcome.
You're welcome on anytime.
Wonderful.
Right.
Thank you, brother.
Okay. All right.